In any suspected abduction or homicide, forensic science is often the deciding factor. Fibers, fingerprints, bodily fluids, and DNA can link suspects to victims or crime scenes with near certainty. In the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, however, the forensic story became one of promise, frustrated by limitations. From the start, investigators hoped that modern science would provide clarity where witness testimony was conflicting. Instead, it introduced further ambiguity. In July 2007, the Polizia Giudiziaria, PJ, brought in 2 British specialist dogs and their handler, Martin Grime, from South Yorkshire Police. Eddie, a cadaver dog trained to alert to the scent of human decomposition. Keela, a blood detection dog trained to alert to microscopic traces of blood. The dogs were brought into apartment 5A and later to vehicles connected to the McCann family. Their findings generated enormous attention. When Eddie alerted behind the sofa in the McCann's apartment, to a cupboard, and to items belonging to Kate McCann, including her clothing. Keela also alerted behind the sofa, suggesting traces of blood. Both dogs later alerted to the boot, trunk, of the Renault Scenic rental car hired by the McCanns 3 weeks after Madeleine disappeared. For police, these results seemed significant, especially the alerts in the car, suggesting that the scent of decomposition or blood had been present long after the disappearance. Portuguese detectives seized on this as potential evidence that Madeleine had died in the apartment and that her body had been transported. Following the dog's alerts, samples were collected and sent to the Forensic Science Service, FSS, in Birmingham, one of the UK's leading forensic laboratories. Scientists conducted low copy number, LCN, DNA testing, a method used to analyze extremely small quantities of genetic material. The results, however, proved inconclusive. The samples contained mixed DNA profiles from multiple individuals, making it impossible to isolate a single match. Some alleles were consistent with Madeleine's DNA profile, but so were many from other potential contributors, including her siblings and parents. The low quality and degraded state of the material meant that results could not meet the threshold of reliability required in court. In short, the FSS concluded that while the DNA might contain elements compatible with Madeleine's profile, it did not prove that the blood or fluids came from her. The contrast between the dog's apparent alerts and the inconclusive DNA results sparked fierce debate. Supporters of the PJ pointed to the dog's reputation for accuracy in other cases, suggesting their alerts should be taken as strong circumstantial evidence. The McCanns and their defenders countered that without laboratory confirmation, dog alerts proved nothing. Indeed, British courts have historically ruled that dog indications cannot be evidence in themselves. They can only guide investigators toward areas for further testing. If forensic science cannot then corroborate the dog's reactions, the alerts have little probative value. Complicating matters further was the issue of crime scene contamination. By the time the PJ conducted formal forensic sweeps of apartment 5A, the site had been accessed repeatedly by family members, friends, resort staff, and police. Windows, doors, and furnishings had been opened, touched, and moved. Outside areas had been trampled by dozens of volunteers searching for Madeleine on the night she vanished. This meant that any DNA found in the apartment had to be interpreted cautiously, since it could easily have been deposited after the disappearance. Forensic specialists repeatedly emphasized that the compromised scene made it nearly impossible to draw firm conclusions. The McCanns' hire of a Renault Scenic on 27 May 2007, 3 weeks after Madeleine's disappearance, became a flashpoint. When the dogs alerted to its boot, Portuguese police speculated that Madeleine's body had been stored or transported there. Yet forensic analysis again failed to back this claim. The DNA traces found in the car were mixed and low quality, with no conclusive link to Madeleine. Moreover, critics argued that if the body had been stored in the car, stronger evidence, such as hair, fluids, or identifiable DNA, would likely have been present. The absence of such proof suggested alternative explanations for the dog's reactions, such as cross-contamination from clothing or household items. By the time the case was archived in July 2008, both Portuguese prosecutors and the UK's Crown Prosecution Service concluded that the forensic evidence did not meet prosecutorial standards. The alerts by Eddie and Keela could not be treated as conclusive, and the DNA evidence was insufficiently reliable to support charges. In effect, the forensic angle, once considered the potential key to unlocking the mystery, collapsed under scientific scrutiny. The Madeleine McCann case has since become a cautionary tale in forensic science. Dog alerts, valuable as investigative tools, but never proof in themselves. Low copy number DNA, powerful but prone to interpretation errors when dealing with degraded, mixed samples. Crime scene management. The early lack of control over Apartment 5A undermined later efforts, showing how vital immediate scene preservation is. The gap between public perception and forensic reality also became stark. Headlines in 2007 suggested DNA proves Madeleine died in the flat, but in fact, no such proof ever existed. The case illustrated how easily complex forensic findings can be misrepresented in the media, fueling speculation and mistrust. One of the most profound consequences of Madeleine McCann's disappearance was the way it transformed international responses to missing children. Before 2007, missing child cases were often treated as local matters, with appeals typically limited to a region or country. Madeleine's case demonstrated that in a connected world, information could be, and often needed to be, circulated globally within hours. Her parents' decision to embrace the media spotlight, combined with the unprecedented volume of coverage, meant that Madeleine's face was soon one of the most recognized images worldwide. Airlines displayed her picture, football stadiums broadcast appeals, and celebrities urged vigilance. This rapid internationalization of appeals became a new standard, encouraging agencies across Europe and North America to streamline cross-border alerts. In particular, the case helped normalize the use of the Amber Alert system, already established in the US, in European countries. The EU later launched Amber Alert Europe, a network connecting police forces and child protection agencies to ensure missing child cases could be shared instantly across borders. While not solely inspired by the McCann case, her disappearance played a central role in raising public and political awareness of the need for such mechanisms. The media frenzy around the case also reshaped conversations about press responsibility in the UK. For months, Madeleine's story dominated front pages. The tabloids in particular moved from sympathetic coverage to outright allegations of parental guilt when the McCanns were made arguidos in September 2007. The aftermath saw some of the largest libel payouts in British history. The Daily Express and Daily Star published front-page apologies, paying $550,000 in damages to the McCanns. Robert Murat, the wrongly accused neighbor, received $600,000 from multiple outlets. These outcomes highlighted the dangers of speculative reporting and the tendency of tabloids to prioritize sensational headlines over verified facts. The case became a key reference point in the Leveson Inquiry, 2011-2012, which examined press standards in the wake of the news of the world phone hacking scandal. Testimony from the McCanns illustrated the emotional toll of media intrusion and misrepresentation. Their ordeal added weight to arguments for stronger press regulation and accountability. Another lasting legacy lies in the legal sphere. particularly the tension between freedom of expression and the right to reputation. The publication of Gonçalo Amaral's 2008 book A Verdade da Mentira, The Truth of the Lie, which argued that Madeleine died in the apartment and that her parents covered it up, sparked years of litigation. Initially, Portuguese courts sided with the McCanns, banning the book and awarding damages. But appeals overturned these rulings, affirming Amaral's right to publish his opinions as a former investigator. The dispute culminated in the European Court of Human Rights, ECHR, ruling of 2022, which upheld the Portuguese decisions. The ECHR stressed that while the McCanns' reputation was undoubtedly harmed, Amaral's book dealt with a matter of public interest and reflected his perspective as a participant in the investigation. The court concluded that his right to freedom of expression outweighed the claim of reputational harm. The ruling did not endorse Amaral's theory. Rather, it underscored the principle that free speech, even controversial, unproven speech, has broad protection in European law. Legal scholars continue to cite this case when discussing the limits of defamation law and the responsibilities of investigators who later publish accounts. The McCann case also illustrated the dark side of the digital public sphere. From the earliest days, online forums and later social media platforms became breeding grounds for speculation, conspiracy theories, and hostility toward the McCanns. Unlike newspapers, which could be sued for defamation, online commentary was harder to regulate. Individuals accused the parents of everything from negligence to elaborate cover-ups, often citing distorted interpretations of police leaks or forensic reports. The case highlighted the permanence and virality of online rumor, foreshadowing wider societal debates about misinformation in the digital age. At the same time, social media campaigns kept Madeleine's name in circulation long after most missing child cases fade from public memory. The official Find Madeleine website, Twitter accounts, and Facebook groups maintained visibility, ensuring that tips and sightings, however unreliable, continued to reach investigators. The disappearance also demonstrated both the potential and the pitfalls of cross-border policing. Britain, Portugal, and later Germany all became deeply involved, each with different legal traditions, investigative cultures, and standards of evidence. Portugal emphasized judicial secrecy, limiting what could be shared publicly during the investigation. Britain prioritized transparency and public appeals, using media to generate leads. Germany relied on domestic jurisdiction over its citizen, Christian Brückner, to build a case, but struggled to convert intelligence into charges. The cooperation was sometimes productive, such as in coordinated ground searches, but often fraught with friction. The case remains a reminder of how complex international investigations can become when crimes cross borders. Finally, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann became a cultural touchstone. Her name is invoked whenever a child vanishes abroad, and media often frame new cases as another Madeleine McCann. Documentaries, podcasts, and books revisit the story repeatedly, not just as true crime narratives, but as explorations of modern parenting, media ethics, and institutional trust. For some, the case symbolizes the fragility of childhood safety in a globalized world. For others, it illustrates how privilege, media connections, and political lobbying can shape the trajectory of a single case, raising uncomfortable questions about why certain missing children receive more attention and resources than others. Nearly 2 decades later, the McCann case endures not only because it remains unsolved, but because it reshaped multiple systems at once. Missing child protocols became faster, broader, and more international. Media standards were tested by libel payouts and ethical inquiries. Legal debates clarified the balance between free expression and reputational protection. Public discourse revealed the power and peril of online speculation. In this sense, Madeleine's disappearance was more than a tragedy for one family. It became a turning point in how societies think about children, safety, truth, and justice. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann has generated countless theories. Some come from law enforcement, others from journalists, authors, or members of the public. Yet nearly 2 decades on, no hypothesis has been proven to the standard required in a court of law. Still, to understand the case's enduring mystery, it is useful to examine the principal lines of thought, how investigators approach them, and why none has yet yielded a conclusive resolution. This remains the theory most consistently supported by the Metropolitan Police Service, Operation Grange, and at least in part, by the Portuguese authorities. Rationale: Madeleine was sleeping in an apartment with unlocked patio doors, making opportunistic entry possible. Praia da Luz was a holiday destination with transient visitors, creating both opportunity and anonymity for a potential offender. Witnesses reported men acting suspiciously near the resort in the days before 3rd May 2007, including alleged charity collectors or individuals loitering around children's play areas. The Smith sighting around 22 and mounds of a man carrying a young child remains compatible with this theory. The 2020 identification of Christian Brückner as a suspect supports the stranger abduction model, given his criminal profile and phone presence in the area that evening. Weaknesses: no forensic evidence of an intruder was recovered from apartment 5A. No one has been charged despite 18 years of investigation. If abduction was planned, it left remarkably little trace. No forced entry, no fibers, and no DNA. Status: the leading official hypothesis, but still unproven. Another theory examined by Operation Grange was that intruders entered apartment 5A intending to steal valuables and encountered Madeleine awake. To prevent her from raising the alarm, they might have removed her from the apartment. Rationale: the Algarve had a documented problem with opportunistic burglaries in holiday apartments. There were reports of attempted break-ins at the Ocean Club. In the same period, Madeleine's light frame could have made it possible for a panicked burglar to carry her away. Weaknesses: burglars typically seek a quick exit, not the abduction of a child, which carries exponentially greater risk. No sign of forced entry was found at the apartment. No stolen items were reported, making the supposed burglary motive questionable. Status: considered plausible in the early years of Operation Grange, but never substantiated by evidence or suspects. From September 2007, when the McCanns were made arguidos by the PJ, the possibility of parental involvement dominated both media speculation and police focus. The theory suggested that Madeleine might have died accidentally in the apartment. Woji, house, through a fall or accidental overdose of medication, and that her parents concealed the body. Rationale: forensic dog alerts to apartment 5A and the McCanns' hire car were interpreted by some investigators as suggestive of a death and subsequent transport. Inconsistencies in witness accounts about timings and apartment checks fueled suspicion. The unusual decision to leave 3 young children alone in an unlocked apartment while dining elsewhere struck many, especially in Portugal, as irresponsible and, for some, suspicious. Weaknesses: the forensic evidence was inconclusive. Low copy number DNA testing could not establish a link to Madeleine. No credible timeline or mechanism has ever been produced showing how the McCanns could have hidden a body, misled their friends, and managed a cover-up under such scrutiny. In July 2008, the Portuguese Attorney General lifted the arguido status of the McCanns, citing lack of evidence. No official inquiry in the UK or Portugal has since treated them as suspects. Civil litigation has consistently affirmed that no finding of parental guilt exists. Status discredited as an official line of inquiry. While Amaril's book revived it in public debate, legally it has no standing. Over the years, other individuals besides Robert Murat and Christian Brückner have been briefly investigated, including pedophile rings operating in southern Portugal. Some convicted offenders lived in or passed through the region, but none were conclusively tied to Madeleine. Local workers at the Ocean Club Resort or construction sites. Police considered whether someone with intimate knowledge of the area could have been involved. Random drifters or opportunists. Several people were interviewed and eliminated. None of these avenues produce prosecutable evidence. The enduring difficulty lies in the absence of direct evidence. No body, no confirmed trace of Madeleine, and no definitive forensic link to any suspect has ever been found. In criminal justice, suspicion and probability are not enough. Courts require certainty. Thus, while abduction remains the most likely explanation, the lack of physical proof keeps other theories alive in the public imagination. Theories are sustained as much by what is unknown, the empty bed, the missing hours, the unanswered phone data, as by what is known. What can be responsibly said is limited but important. Madeleine McCann disappeared between 21 hours and 22 of Dante on 3rd May 2007. No evidence has ever proven she died in the apartment. Her parents were investigated and cleared. The strongest official lead is Christian Brückner, but evidence remains insufficient for charges. Theories about burglary or opportunistic abduction remain possible but unproven. Beyond these points, speculation drifts into conjecture, unsupported by admissible evidence. The responsible stance is one of caution, acknowledging likelihoods while recognizing the limits of what can be known without new discoveries. In Britain, the Metropolitan Police Service, MPS, continues to lead the investigation through Operation Grange, though it now exists in a far more reduced form than in its early years. Scale. From an initial team of 40 detectives in 2011, staffing has shrunk to the equivalent of 1 or 2 full-time officers, supported by analysts when necessary. This reflects the gradual narrowing of investigative leads. Funding. By September 2022, Operation Grange had cost approximately $12.94 million, making it one of the most expensive missing person inquiries in UK history. Since then, the Home Office has approved annual extensions, usually several £100,000 each year, to maintain a basic investigative capacity. Focus. Detectives continue to pursue a small number of significant lines of inquiry. Publicly, they decline to reveal details, but it is widely understood that much of their liaison work is with German and Portuguese counterparts regarding Christian Brückner. Status. The operation remains officially open as of 2025, though the MPS has acknowledged that the scale of resources is proportionate to a case that has produced few actionable leads in recent years. The team's role is as much about maintaining family liaison with the McCanns as about generating new breakthroughs. As the country where Madeleine disappeared, Portugal retains primary jurisdiction. 2008, the PJ's initial investigation was archived, lifting the arguido status of the McCanns and Robert Murat. 2013, the case was reopened after Operation Grange's review identified new leads. Recent activity. In coordination with Germany, Portuguese police conducted ground searches in Praia da Luz in 2014, and again at the Arad Reservoir in May 2023. They also assisted in examining wells and remote Algarve locations in 2024 and 2025. Challenges. Portugal's system of judicial secrecy limits what can be disclosed publicly, while an investigation is ongoing. This has often clashed with Britain's more transparent approach. The PJ has been accused in some British media of inefficiency, while Portuguese authorities have criticized British interference. Status. As of 2025, the PJ's inquiry remains formally open, but is largely reactive, supporting German requests, responding to new intelligence, and maintaining procedural jurisdiction in case of future charges. Since 2020, Germany has become the most vocal jurisdiction in the case, after prosecutors in Braunschweig identified Christian Brückner as a suspect. Public statements. German prosecutors took the extraordinary step of announcing they believed Madeleine was dead and that Brückner was responsible. This is the most definitive position any authority has ever taken. Evidence. Prosecutors cited mobile phone data placing Brückner in Praia da Luz on 3 May 2007, his known criminal history of violent and sexual offenses, and his residency in the Algarve at the time. However, they have not disclosed the concrete evidence they claim supports their belief in her death. Plaha. Legal proceedings. In 2024, Brückner stood trial in Braunschweig for unrelated sexual offenses committed in Portugal between 2000 and 2017. He was acquitted in October 2024, though prosecutors announced their intent to appeal. These charges did not involve Madeleine, but the trial kept his name in the headlines. Future. Brückner remains in custody for a prior rape conviction, but is expected to be released in 2025 unless new charges succeed. Prosecutors maintain he is still under investigation in the McCann case, but they admit they currently lack the evidence needed to indict him. The three countries now form a triangle of cooperation, each with distinct roles. Portugal holds jurisdiction over the crime scene and physical searches. United Kingdom provides long-term investigative review, intelligence analysis, and family liaison through Operation Grange. Germany focuses on Brückner, using its jurisdiction over nationals to investigate crimes abroad. Communication has improved since the tense early years, 2007-2008, but differences remain. Portugal's emphasis on secrecy contrasts with Britain's media-driven approach, and Germany's bold public claims have at times raised expectations that could not be fulfilled. Kate and Jerry McCann continue to maintain the Find Madeleine campaign, though their public profile has receded somewhat in recent years. Each anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance brings renewed statements of hope. The family emphasizes gratitude for the persistence of police in all three countries, while acknowledging the immense pain of not knowing Madeleine's fate. In their 2023 statement, the McCanns wrote, "We live with this uncertainty, sustained by the hope that one day we will have answers." Thus, 18 years later, three nations remain entangled in a case without resolution. The persistence of these parallel efforts is extraordinary, but their inability to converge on definitive proof underscores the central tragedy, that Madeleine's fate remains unknown. 18 years after Madeleine McCann's disappearance, the central tragedy remains not only that she has never been found, but also that so many critical questions still lack definitive answers. These enduring unknowns form the core of the mystery, and they explain why the case continues to grip public imagination and frustrate investigators across three countries. The single most important unresolved issue is what happened in the critical hour-long window on the night of 3rd May 2007. At 21 Kao, Jerry McCann checked on the children and reported all was well. At 21:15, Jane Tanner claimed to see a man carrying a child. Around 21:30, Matthew Oldfield entered the apartment but did not visually confirm Madeleine was in her bed. At 22 How, Kate McCann found her daughter missing. This sequence seems straightforward, but in practice it is riddled with uncertainty. Witnesses' memories diverge about timings, the width of doors, and what exactly they saw. Was the abduction closer to 21 to 15, as once believed, or closer to 22 soirs, as Operation Grange later suggested? The lack of precision in this timeline creates space for competing theories and prevents the construction of a coherent narrative of events. The Smith family sighting remains one of the strongest potential leads. Around 22:10, the family reported seeing a man carrying a girl toward the beach. They described the child as being around 3 or 4, wearing pale pajamas, consistent with Madeleine. The man was in his 30s, medium build, casually dressed. An E-fit was produced in 2008, but not widely released until the 2013 Crime Watch appeal. Despite this, no suspect has ever been conclusively tied to the description. Was it Brückner? Was it another unidentified local or tourist? Or was it unrelated altogether? Without corroboration, the sighting remains a tantalizing but unconfirmed piece of the puzzle. The Tanner sighting at 21:15 once defined the case. For years, investigators and the public believed this was the moment Madeleine was taken. But in 2013, Operation Grange concluded it was an innocent tourist carrying his own child. If true, this eliminates one of the most prominent supposed leads. But if wrong, and Tanner did see the abductor, then a key opportunity may have been missed. The lack of forensic or photographic corroboration means the sighting can neither be definitively confirmed nor dismissed, leaving a gap in the reconstruction of events. Perhaps the most striking unknown is the total absence of physical evidence linking anyone to Madeleine's disappearance. Despite multiple searches of apartment 5A, forensic dog alerts and subsequent DNA analysis, large-scale digs and reservoir searches, no trace of Madeleine, no body, no clothing, no DNA has ever been recovered. This raises difficult questions. Did the perpetrator remove all evidence with extraordinary efficiency? Was the environment itself, the sea, the scrubland, the wells, enough to erase forensic traces after nearly 2 decades? Or does the absence of evidence point to an explanation outside the abduction model? Operation Grange placed heavy emphasis on phone records from 2007. Detectives noted a significant volume of data showing mobile phone activity in Praia da Luz on the night of 3rd May. Yet so far, no conclusive link has been made public. Brückner's phone activity, receiving a half-hour call around the time Madeleine disappeared, remains suspicious but circumstantial. Who was on the other end of that call? Why has that individual not been publicly identified? Could gaps in metadata retention or Portuguese record-keeping have obscured a crucial lead? Digital evidence, often the backbone of modern investigations, was far less advanced in 2007. The inability to reconstruct a complete digital footprint leaves open questions that today might be solvable with more robust telecom analysis. Several witnesses recalled men acting suspiciously near the Ocean Club in the days leading up to Madeleine's disappearance. Some posed as charity collectors, others loitered near apartments or children's play areas. Were these individuals scouting the resort? Were they connected to Brückner or another network? Or were they unrelated incidents amplified by hindsight? The answers remain elusive, as none of these men were ever conclusively identified. The greatest unknown, of course, is what happened to Madeleine herself. If she was abducted, was it by a lone opportunist or an organized group? If she died in the apartment, how could there be no definitive forensic trace? If Brückner is responsible, as German prosecutors believe, where is the evidence that ties him to her disappearance? 18 years later, the absence of definitive proof leaves Madeleine's fate unresolved. For her parents, the question is not abstract, but deeply personal. Is she alive somewhere, or did she die that night? Without an answer, closure remains impossible. Each of these unanswered questions has ripple effects. For investigators, they represent missing pieces of the puzzle that prevent charges. For the public, they fuel speculation, rumor, and conspiracy. For the family, they mean living indefinitely in limbo, neither able to grieve fully nor to hope with certainty. The enduring unknowns explain why the Madeleine McCann case continues to resonate. It is not just a mystery, but a story defined by its gaps, silences, and unanswered questions. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann on 3rd May 2007 is not just a police file. It has become one of the defining mysteries of the 21st century. After 18 years of investigations, media storms, lawsuits, and public appeals, we are left with an uncomfortable truth. No one knows what happened to her. That absence of resolution is what gives the case its haunting power. For the McCanns, the pain is ongoing. Every birthday, every anniversary, every photograph of Madeleine frozen at age 3 is a reminder of what has been lost and what remains uncertain. They have lived in the paradox of hope and grief for nearly 2 decades. Too much evidence to say she is safe, too little to declare she is gone. The case has become a benchmark for how missing child investigations are handled worldwide. It shows the necessity of immediate scene preservation. The contamination of apartment 5A meant potential forensic opportunities were lost forever. Cross-border coordination, different legal cultures, British transparency, Portuguese secrecy, German directness, often clashed, slowing progress. Use of modern tools, advances in phone analysis, digital forensics, and international alerts emerged in part because of the frustrations exposed here. At the same time, the case illustrates the limits of policing. Even with millions of pounds spent, hundreds of officers involved, and unprecedented public awareness, investigators could not deliver closure without hard evidence. It is a sobering reminder that some mysteries resist resolution, no matter the effort applied. The disappearance also exposed the double-edged nature of publicity. The McCann strategy of globalizing their daughter's image was unprecedented and undeniably effective in keeping her case alive. Yet the same spotlight invited suspicion, defamation, and online conspiracy theories that continue to this day. The British tabloids' reckless coverage led to record libel payouts, while the Amaral book saga highlighted the tension between free expression and reputational harm. Together, these episodes reshaped media ethics debates in Europe and the UK. In the digital era, Madeleine's case foreshadowed broader challenges: the speed at which misinformation spreads, the permanence of online rumor, and the way global audiences consume crime stories as both tragedy and entertainment. As of 2025, the 3 nations most deeply involved, Portugal, the UK, and Germany, remain locked in a kind of uneasy partnership. Each has played a role. Portugal as the site of the crime, Britain as the persistent reviewer, Germany as the bold accuser. Yet none has managed to deliver what matters most: truth. German prosecutors continue to insist that Christian Brückner is the prime suspect, but without charges, their claims remain statements of belief, not fact. British detectives continue to maintain Operation Grange, though at a fraction of its former size. Portuguese investigators keep the case technically open, but have little left to pursue. Thus, the machinery of justice continues to turn, but slowly, with diminishing hope of a decisive breakthrough. Beyond institutions, this is a story about human fragility and endurance. A young child vanished in the ordinary setting of a holiday apartment, and in that moment, the illusion of safety, trusted by parents worldwide, was shattered. It is also a story about resilience, the McCanns' determination to keep searching, the police forces that refuse to let the file close entirely, and the global public that, for better or worse, has never forgotten Madeleine's name. The Madeleine McCann case endures because it embodies a universal fear that a child can disappear without explanation, without evidence, without closure. It leaves us with more questions than answers, with theories but not truths, with hope but not certainty. And perhaps that is why, 18 years later, we still ask, what happened to Madeleine? Until the day evidence emerges, or until time finally yields its secrets, the case remains open, unfinished, and unforgettable.